You'll never believe what my daughter did to me on Mother's Day, but wait until you hear how I got my revenge. My name is Grace, I'm 74 years old. And this is the story of how I discovered my own worth after decades of being treated like garbage by my own family. It started as what should have been a beautiful Sunday morning. The golden sunlight was dancing through the windows of my daughter Danielle's living room when I knocked on her door, dressed in my finest emerald dress, the one that always made me feel dignified and graceful. I had spent the morning picking fresh daisies from my garden and buying expensive chocolates for my precious grandchildren, my heart bursting with anticipation for our Mother's Day celebration. "Grandma Grace!" little Tommy screamed with delight, his small arms wrapping around my waist like he hadn't seen me in months instead of just days. His sister Emma joined the embrace, and for those precious seconds, everything felt perfect in my world. These children were my sunshine, my reason for breathing. But the warmth didn't last long. Michael, my son-in-law, acknowledged my presence with nothing more than a cold glance and a barely audible grunt. No happy Mother's Day. No smile, just the kind of greeting you'd give a stranger who'd interrupted your peace. Danielle emerged from the kitchen wearing a strained smile that looked more like a grimace, her eyes holding secrets I couldn't yet read. "Oh good, you're here, Mom," she said with fake cheerfulness that made my stomach clench. "We've prepared something really special for you today. Come sit down." I settled onto their plush sofa, the same one I had helped them buy 2 years ago when their old furniture fell apart. The grandchildren gathered at my feet like eager puppies, their innocent faces glowing with excitement. They had no idea what was coming. Neither did I. Danielle reached into her designer purse, another gift I had unknowingly funded, and pulled out a pink greeting card decorated with crayon flowers. The children's artwork should have warmed my heart, and it did until I read what was inside. "It's from all of us," Danielle announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Read it out loud, Mom, so the whole family can enjoy it." My hands trembled slightly as I opened the card, expecting the usual Mother's Day sentiments. The children had drawn sweet little flowers around the edges, and I could see Tommy's careful handwriting attempting to spell Grandma. How precious, I thought. How innocent and pure. Then I began to read aloud, my voice clear and proud. "Roses are red, violets are blue." But the next words felt like daggers piercing my soul. "You're nothing but a burden. Nobody wants you here. Your time is over, time for you to disappear. Signed, the family who's sick of dealing with your presence." The silence that followed felt like an eternity. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears, could feel the blood draining from my face. Then Michael erupted into cruel laughter, the kind that echoes in your nightmares. Danielle tried to cover her mouth, but I could see her shoulders shaking with mirth. Even my innocent grandchildren, not understanding the cruelty but following the adult's lead, began to giggle. "Did you see her face?" Danielle gasped between her horrible laughs. "Michael, please tell me you got a video of that expression." The card slipped from my numb fingers and fluttered to the floor like a dying bird. Hot tears began streaming down my cheeks, probably smearing the careful makeup I had applied that morning to look nice for them. My heart felt like it was literally breaking into pieces inside my chest. "Oh, come on, Mom, it's just a harmless joke," Danielle continued. But there wasn't an ounce of remorse in her voice. "You always were too sensitive about everything. Learn to take a joke for once." Michael walked over and snatched the card from the floor, examining it like a trophy. "Yeah, Grace, we were just having some fun with you. But honestly," he paused and I could see him choosing his words carefully, "you have been getting a bit overwhelming lately. Maybe it's time to think about your living situation." "My living situation?" I whispered, my voice cracking like autumn leaves. "Well, you know," Danielle said, sitting down across from me with the patience one might show a difficult child. "There are wonderful senior communities designed for people at your stage of life. Places where you'd be surrounded by peers, where you'd get the specialized attention you need. You'd probably be much happier." The phrase senior community rang in my head like a death knell. My own flesh and blood wanted to discard me like yesterday's newspaper, ship me off to some facility where I'd be out of their sight and out of their lives. But I thought, my voice was barely a whisper now, I thought I was here to celebrate being your mother. And you are celebrating, Michael interjected with condescending cheerfulness. But let's be realistic here, Grace. You're not getting any younger. You need proper care, and frankly, we have our own lives to live. Our own priorities. Little Emma, barely 6 years old, tugged on my dress with confusion clouding her sweet face. Grandma, why are your eyes leaking? Before I could answer, Danielle quickly pulled her away. Come here, sweetheart. Grandma's just being overly emotional. You know how old people get. I sat there feeling more alone than I had ever felt in my entire 74 years on this earth. Here I was, on the day meant to honor my role as a mother, being publicly humiliated and dismissed by the very child I had sacrificed everything for. I had become the family's favorite joke, their burden, their problem to solve. Slowly, I stood up on shaking legs, my dignity hanging by the thinnest of threads. I should probably just go home. Okay, Mom, Danielle replied without even bothering to stand. We'll give you a call sometime this week. I walked to their front door carrying the shattered remains of my heart, but inside my mind, something was awakening. Something that had been sleeping for far too long. That night, alone in my quiet house, I cried until my tears ran dry. But as the darkness deepened, so did my resolve. It was time for my family to learn who Grace really was. The next morning, I blocked all their phone numbers. But before I could move forward, I needed to understand how I had allowed myself to reach such a devastating low point. I settled into my favorite armchair, the same one where I had nursed Danielle 45 years ago, and let the memories wash over me like a movie reel of my life. It all began when I was 29 and Danielle was just 3 years old. Her father walked out on us one Tuesday morning without warning, leaving nothing but a cowardly note on the kitchen table. I can't handle this life anymore. Sorry. He didn't even have the decency to say goodbye to his little girl. I can still remember holding my sobbing daughter that night as she asked where Daddy had gone, promising myself that she would never want for anything as long as I lived. And I kept that promise even when it nearly destroyed me. I worked 16-hour days at the textile mill, my hands becoming rough and scarred from operating the heavy machinery. Every penny of overtime went toward Danielle's future. When she was 17 and dreamed of becoming a nurse, I sold my mother's precious jewelry collection, the only valuable things I owned, to pay for her education. Mama, are you absolutely sure about this? She had asked when I handed her the money, her eyes bright with dreams and possibilities. Completely sure, my darling, I had replied without hesitation. Your education is the most important investment we can make. For 5 long years while she attended nursing school, I cleaned office buildings on weekends, my back aching and my feet swollen, returning home to find Danielle studying at our small dining table. Seeing her determination made every sacrifice worthwhile. The day she graduated, we both cried tears of joy. We did it, Mama, she had whispered, holding me tight. None of this would have been possible without your sacrifices. When she met Michael, I genuinely liked him. He seemed hardworking, respectful, and genuinely devoted to my daughter. When they decided to marry, I didn't hesitate to contribute $12,000, my entire life savings, toward their dream wedding. Mom, this is too generous, Danielle had protested when I handed her the check. Nonsense. I had smiled through tears of happiness. It's the most important day of your life. You deserve everything beautiful. When they purchased their first home, I provided the down payment, $25,000 that represented every penny I had managed to save. Watching them hold the keys to their own house filled me with such pride and satisfaction. Then the grandchildren arrived, 2 perfect little angels who became the absolute center of my universe. When Danielle returned to work after maternity leave, I became their dedicated, unpaid childcare provider. Every single morning for 3 years, I walked 6 blocks at dawn to reach their house by 6 o'clock. I prepared breakfast, dressed the children, took them to the playground, fed them nutritious meals, gave them baths, and read bedtime stories until their parents returned from work. When Danielle came home each evening, she found a spotless house and happy, well-cared-for children. I honestly don't know what we'd do without you, Mom, Danielle used to tell me during those early days. You're literally an angel sent from heaven. But gradually, imperceptibly, everything began to change. The grateful thank yous became less frequent and eventually disappeared altogether. My opinions about the children's welfare started being dismissed as unwanted interference. When I expressed concern about little Tommy's persistent cough and suggested a pediatrician visit, Michael snapped at me. "Grace, we're the parents here. We don't need your medical advice." The first time they spoke to me so disrespectfully, I remained silent, convincing myself that perhaps I had been too pushy. Then the subtle criticisms began creeping in like poison ivy. "Mom, you don't seem to have the energy you used to for watching the kids. Grace, I think you mixed up the children's vitamins again. Maybe you should consider resting more at home. You seem confused about their schedules lately. Are you feeling all right?" But I persisted, kept helping, kept giving everything I had. I couldn't bear the thought of my grandchildren suffering because of family tension. 2 years ago, when Michael lost his job and they faced foreclosure, I started sending them $500 monthly to keep them afloat. "It's just temporary," they assured me. "Just until Michael finds something better." Michael found new employment within 6 months, but they never mentioned stopping the monthly payments. They simply continued accepting my money as if it were their natural right, their guaranteed income. When the children needed new computers for school, I spent $2,000 without being asked. When Danielle's car broke down, I provided $4,000 for repairs. When they wanted to renovate their kitchen, I contributed $8,000. Little by little, I had become their silent financial provider, always available to solve their monetary problems, but increasingly excluded from important family decisions and celebrations. 1 year ago, Danielle organized an elaborate birthday party for Michael. I only discovered it by chance when Tommy mentioned the secret party in passing. Why wasn't I invited? I asked Danielle over the phone, trying to keep the hurt out of my voice. "Oh, Mom, it was really just a tiny gathering. Just the 4 of us. We thought you'd find it boring and wouldn't want to come." But I saw the photographs on social media later. 20 people had attended, including all of Michael's relatives whom I knew well. Every single person had been invited except me. That night, I cried myself to sleep, but I convinced myself it must have been an innocent oversight. Those oversights became routine. They forgot my birthday. They canceled our regular lunch dates. When I appeared unannounced at their house, they always seemed irritated by the interruption, treating me like an unwelcome door-to-door salesperson. But the final breaking point came 3 months ago. I was helping prepare dinner in their kitchen when I overheard Michael talking on his phone outside on the patio. "Yeah, my mother-in-law lives by herself. She's becoming really clingy and dependent. No, she's not sick exactly, but you know how elderly people get. We're definitely looking into options for moving her somewhere more appropriate." I froze behind the door, my blood turning to ice water. My own son-in-law was discussing disposing of me like unwanted furniture, planning to ship me off to some institution. That night I couldn't sleep. I had given my entire life, every dollar I owned, all my love and energy to this family. And now I was nothing more than an inconvenience they wanted to eliminate. But they didn't know something crucial about me. Something I had kept secret for decades. My mother, before her death, had told me about a family property in Nassau, Bahamas, that I would inherit when I turned 70. It was a beautiful beachfront condominium that had been rented out for years through a property management company. The rental income had been accumulating in a separate account that I never touched, growing steadily for decades. I also had substantial investments from the inheritance my Aunt Lucille left me when she died childless. Bonds, stocks, certificates of deposit money that multiplied quietly while I lived modestly on my Social Security checks. In total, I had nearly $400,000 that my family knew absolutely nothing about. They believed I was a poor old woman surviving on government assistance. They had no idea that I had been discreetly funding their comfortable lifestyle for years, not out of financial desperation, but out of pure, unconditional love. But after the Mother's Day humiliation, something inside me shattered permanently. It was time for them to discover Grace's true worth. That cruel greeting card had been my wake-up call, my moment of absolute clarity. I spent the entire night after Mother's Day holding that hateful card, its words echoing in my head like a broken record. You're nothing but a burden. Nobody wants you here. But as my tears dried and dawn approached, something miraculous happened. The overwhelming sadness transformed into something much more powerful: crystal clear determination and unshakable resolve. For the first time in decades, I saw my situation with complete, brutal honesty. I wasn't a burden, I was the foundation holding their entire life together. I was their benefactor, their supporter, their safety net. And they had repaid my generosity with cruelty and disrespect. I slowly rose from my chair and walked to my bedroom, retrieving a wooden box from my dresser that I hadn't opened in months. Inside were all my important documents: bank statements, property deeds, investment certificates, financial records they knew nothing about. As I spread the papers across my dining table and began calculating, the numbers took my breath away. In just the past 5 years, I had given Danielle and Michael exactly $67,000. $67,000 that they had accepted as their birthright while treating me worse than a stranger. The house down payment, $25,000. The wedding expenses, $12,000. Monthly financial assistance for 2 years, $12,000. The children's computers, $2,000. Car repairs, $4,000. Kitchen renovation, $8,000. Countless smaller expenses, $4,000 more. Meanwhile, I was still living in my modest house, wearing my same old Sunday dress, walking to the grocery store to save gas money. But the money wasn't what hurt most. What truly broke my heart was remembering how dramatically their treatment of me had deteriorated. I remembered my oldest grandson's birthday party 6 months ago. I had arrived early to help decorate, as I always did. But when I knocked on the door, Michael opened it with obvious annoyance. "Grace, the party doesn't start until 3. Why are you here so early?" "I thought I could help with the preparations," I had said with my usual cheerful smile. "We don't need help. Danielle has everything under control." Behind him, I could see Brenda, Michael's mother, hanging colorful balloons in the living room. She had been invited to help prepare. I was being treated like an uninvited guest at my own grandson's celebration. "I can wait outside until 3, I had mumbled, feeling utterly humiliated. "Don't be so dramatic, Mom," Danielle had said, appearing from the kitchen with flour on her apron. "You can stay, but please don't interfere in the kitchen. You know you get confused with recipes." Confused with recipes? Me, who had cooked for this family for decades. That day, I sat alone in a corner of their patio like a stranger at my own grandson's party. I watched Brenda receive compliments on the cake she had baked while I, who had paid for half the party's expenses, was completely ignored. When everyone gathered to sing happy birthday, I remained in the background while others formed an intimate circle around my grandson. No one noticed I wasn't included in the family photographs. Later that evening, as I discreetly collected dirty plates and cups, little Tommy approached me with innocent curiosity. "Grandma, why were you so quiet today?" "I was just tired, my love," I lied, forcing a smile. "Grandma Brenda says you're too old for big parties like this." Those words from my own grandson cut through me like razor blades. Brenda, who was only 3 years younger than me, was poisoning my grandchildren's minds against me. But even after that humiliation, I continued giving them money, continued helping, continued hoping things would improve. How foolish I had been. I also remembered last Christmas with painful clarity. I had purchased expensive gifts for everyone. A new bicycle for my oldest grandson, a tablet for the youngest, French perfume for Danielle, and power tools Michael had mentioned wanting. I spent nearly $3,000 on those carefully chosen presents. On Christmas Eve, I arrived with my arms full of beautifully wrapped packages. The children ran toward me with excitement, but Danielle quickly redirected them. "Kids, put Grandma's presents under the tree with all the others. We'll open everything together tomorrow morning." My gifts disappeared into the massive pile of packages they had bought for themselves and each other. When present opening time arrived, no one acknowledged who had given what. The children offered vague thanks to everyone collectively, but the most painful moment came afterward. I had brought a special gift for Danielle, a pearl necklace that had belonged to my grandmother. It was an antique piece, valuable and rich with family history, passed down through 3 generations of women in our family. "Mom, it's very pretty," Danielle had said without even trying it on. "But honestly, I don't really wear much jewelry. Maybe you should save it for when the grandkids are older." She handed the box back to me without even opening the clasp to examine the pearls closely. I had imagined that moment for months, picturing how beautiful my daughter would look wearing the same pearls that had adorned her great-grandmother and grandmother before her. That night, in my empty house, I cried while holding the small pearl box against my heart. It wasn't the monetary value that devastated me, it was the complete indifference to something that came from my soul. But the absolute final straw came 2 months ago when I contracted the flu. I was bedridden for a week with a fever reaching 102 degrees. I could barely walk to the bathroom, much less cook or care for myself. I called Danielle, asking if she could bring me some soup or at least check on my condition. "Oh, Mom, we're incredibly busy right now. Michael has a huge project deadline at work, and I'm pulling double shifts at the hospital. Can't you ask one of your neighbors?" "But honey, I can barely stand up. I'm really sick." "Mom, you're not a child anymore. You need to learn to be independent. We can't come running every time you catch a little cold." "A little cold?" I had a dangerous fever, and she dismissed it as a minor inconvenience. She hung up and didn't call back for the entire week. It was Mrs. Johnson, my 82-year-old neighbor, who brought me homemade chicken soup and made sure I took my medications properly. A woman I barely knew showed more concern for my welfare than my own daughter. When I finally recovered and resumed visiting my family, no one asked about my illness. It was as if that terrible week of suffering had never happened. Now, sitting with those financial documents spread before me, I understood with painful clarity what my real role was in my family's life. I wasn't the beloved grandmother or cherished mother. I was the human ATM machine. When they needed money, Grace was there. When they needed free childcare, Grace was available. When they needed someone to blame for their frustrations, Grace was the perfect target. But when Grace needed love, care, respect, or simply a phone call during illness, Grace might as well have been invisible. That night, I made the most difficult and liberating decision of my entire life. I opened my laptop and logged into my online banking for the first time in months. It was time to make some crucial changes. First, I canceled the automatic $500 monthly transfer to Danielle's account. Second, I closed the joint savings account we had opened for family emergencies that somehow only they ever experienced. Third, I completely rewrote my will. Everything I had designated for Danielle and Michael would now go to a foundation supporting abandoned elderly people. Fourth, I did something I never imagined I would do. I purchased a first-class plane ticket to Nassau. It was time to see the property I had inherited and start living the life I deserved. But before I left, I needed to ensure my family understood exactly what they had lost. Tuesday morning arrived with crystal clear purpose. I had slept only 3 hours, but for the first time in years, I felt completely awake and absolutely determined. I dressed in my most elegant charcoal suit, the one I had bought for Danielle's nursing school graduation but rarely worn since. I applied my makeup carefully and styled my hair into a sophisticated chignon. I wanted to look like the powerful, successful woman I actually was, not the needy old lady they had convinced themselves I was. My first stop was the bank. Mr. Henderson, my financial advisor, seemed surprised to see me so early in the morning. "Mrs. Grace, how can I assist you today?" "I need to make several significant changes to my accounts," I announced in a voice steady with conviction. Over the next 2 hours, I completely reorganized my financial life. I terminated all automatic transfers to Danielle's accounts. I closed the joint account we had established 3 years earlier. I moved money from various investments into my primary checking account, giving myself immediate access to funds I would need for my new life. "Are you certain about these changes, ma'am?" Mr. Henderson asked with obvious concern. "These are very substantial modifications to your financial structure." "Absolutely certain," I replied firmly. "It's my money, and I have every right to control how it's used." Next, I visited my attorney's office. Mr. Franklin had handled my family's legal affairs for decades and knew everyone involved. I need to completely revise my will, I announced without preamble. Mr. Franklin, a distinguished older gentleman who had known me since Danielle was a child, removed his glasses and studied me with worry. Grace, is everything all right? This seems like a very drastic step. Everything is perfect, I replied. For the first time in years, I can see my situation with complete clarity. I explained exactly what I wanted. Everything previously designated for Danielle and Michael would now benefit a foundation for homeless seniors. I also established a trust fund for my grandchildren that they could only access at age 25, and only if they maintained genuine, loving contact with me, not contact motivated by family obligation or financial gain. Grace, perhaps you should consider this decision for a few more days? Mr. Franklin suggested gently. These changes are irreversible once implemented. I've had 74 years to think about it, I replied. And the past 5 years have taught me everything I need to know about my family's true feelings. I signed every document with a steady hand. No trembling, no second thoughts, no regrets. My final stop was the travel agency. I had spent the previous night researching my Nassau property online. It was a stunning 3-bedroom oceanfront condominium in an exclusive neighborhood. The property management company had been renting it successfully for years, generating substantial income that had been accumulating in a Bahamian account I had never touched. I want to fly to Nassau this Friday, I told the travel agent. Is this a vacation trip, ma'am? No, I smiled for the first time in months. This is a liberation trip. I purchased a first-class ticket because if I was going to start my new life, I would do it with style and dignity. But before departing, I had one final task: writing the letters that would explain everything. I returned home at noon and sat at my writing desk, taking out elegant letterhead I had purchased years ago but never used. It was time to tell my family exactly what had happened and why. The first letter was for Danielle. My dearest daughter, by the time you read this letter, I will be on my way to Nassau, where I will be living in the beachfront property I inherited from my family property you never knew existed. I have made the decision to permanently terminate all financial support I have been providing you for the past several years. The $500 monthly you have been receiving has been canceled indefinitely. The joint account you use for your various emergencies has been closed permanently. Please don't interpret this as punishment, but rather as a long overdue lesson in independence that I should have taught you years ago. For decades, I gave you everything I possessed. My time, my money, my energy, my unconditional love and devotion. But somewhere along the way, you decided I was a burden rather than a blessing. The Mother's Day card was simply the final insult in a long series of disrespectful treatment. The real problem began much earlier, when you stopped seeing me as your mother and started viewing me as your personal maid and private banking service. I have changed my will completely. My inheritance will now benefit people who truly understand and value generosity and family love. Your children will have access to a trust fund when they reach 25, but only if they can demonstrate they are capable of maintaining a genuine, loving relationship with me. Do not contact me asking for money. Do not call begging me to return. Do not send the grandchildren to emotionally manipulate me. If you genuinely want your mother back in your life, you will need to prove that you value me for who I am as a person, not for what I can give you financially. Your mother, who has finally learned to value herself, Grace. The second letter was for Michael. Michael, I never saw you as merely my son-in-law. I welcomed you as the son I never had, but you transformed me into the awkward mother-in-law you wanted to eliminate. I heard your phone conversation 3 months ago when you were discussing finding an appropriate place to relocate me. As if I were outdated furniture cluttering your home. What you didn't realize is that I already had the perfect place. I simply needed to remember my own worth. I own property in Nassau, have investments that generate more annual income than you earn at your job, and possess the financial freedom to live wherever and however I choose. For years, I quietly subsidized your comfortable lifestyle. I paid for repairs, covered expenses, handled emergencies. I did all of this out of love, not obligation. But you interpreted my generosity as weakness, my availability as dependency, and my love as an annoyance. Now you will need to support yourselves with your own resources and efforts. I wish you the best of luck with that challenge. After completing both letters, I placed them in sealed envelopes and left them prominently displayed on my coffee table, where they would be easily discovered. Then I sat in my living room smiling peacefully. It had taken me 74 years, but I had finally learned the most important lesson of my life. You teach people how to treat you by what you are willing to accept. For decades, I had accepted crumbs of affection because I was terrified of being alone. But it turned out that being alone was infinitely better than being with people who didn't respect or value me. And now that I had learned this truth, I realized I wasn't really alone at all. I was free. I was going to Nassau to start fresh. And for the first time in a very long time, I was genuinely excited about my future. If my story resonates with you, if you've ever felt undervalued or taken for granted, remember this. It's never too late to recognize your own worth and demand the respect you deserve. Sometimes the people who should love us most are the ones who need to learn that our love is a gift, not a guarantee. Thanks for reading my story. If you enjoyed it, I'd love for you to follow along for more stories about finding strength in unexpected places.